I've just published a review of the Konica Hexar RF, so I thought I'd do a little video talking about some of the features that I really like. It's managed to sort of enter my life with, I suppose, to begin with, a touch of skepticism about how good it could be, and very quickly has become one of my favourite cameras. Unfortunately, with these cameras, they are completely battery dependent, so if anything goes wrong with them, then unfortunately they can quickly become quite nice looking doorsteps. But until that happens, I'm going to hopefully continue to enjoy this camera quite a lot. So I suppose the biggest concern, apart from its potential to die, before I had it, was the viewfinder. If you read online, there's a couple of reviews that talk about that the viewfinder is slightly less bright than the equivalent Leica, and that the rangefinder patch isn't as isn't as bright, and the magnification of the viewfinder is lower, so it's sort of less reliable with faster lenses. I'd read those criticisms of this camera a few times, and probably taken a bit too much from them, really, because in reality the viewfinder is excellent. I'm quite lucky with this camera because it's pretty much new condition. The viewfinder is very clear, but it is a fraction less bright than a Leica viewfinder, and the rangefinder patch is a fraction smaller, possibly slightly less bright, and it does have this weird thing when you look through the viewfinder, you go off angle slightly. It can give you a sort of a false positive in terms of focus, but actually you get used to that very quickly. It sort of had this kind of weird, you sort of look, if you sort of focus on something, and as you sort of go off angle, it sort of gives you the sense that something's in focus when it isn't, but then when you go back on angle straight through the viewfinder, it sort of pops into focus, so that's not an issue. And even with this, my current favourite lens, the Voigtlander 50mm 1.2, the new one, I've had no problems focusing it at all, wide open. So yeah, all those viewfinder related potential issues just meaningless as far as I'm concerned. It's performed perfectly. It's a perfect feeling camera in the hand. The weight and feel of it, I'm used to Leica's. The weight and feel of it, the sort of how solid it is, it feels very familiar. Obviously it's not that familiar because it's got a motor winder. No, things like little digital screens. Come on, stupid focus thing. Little digital screens there on the top, and extra dials. So I haven't used this in manual at all. I bought it. I've got manual cameras that I'm quite happy with. I bought it because it has auto exposure, and the way that the auto exposure works, it has two different types. It's got standard AE and an AEL. The AEL, which I prefer, a auto exposure lock. You half press the button, you get your exposure from what you want to meter from. Half press the button, lock in the exposure, reframe, and shoot. And it just works like exactly as I could hope, really. And then the second dial, exposure compensation, and come on, there we go. Exposure compensation and your exposure index. So you can set, in this instance I've got it set to EI 800 because I've got Portra 800 in it, and then I can set if I wanted to expose one stop further under it, or one stop underexposed, like set that to one stop under. If I took it off AEL and put it into manual mode, it would then, those that metering, those metering settings are reflected in what's in the manual mode metering. If I then switch back to AEL, I don't have to change that dial. It's set as it was before. So there is a distinct benefit in having the two in having the two dials, compared to the single dial that you have on the likes of the Zeiss Icon and the Minolta CLE. Sorry, I've got a really sore throat. Anyway, so yeah, I've said all this and plenty more in my meandering, as I've called it, meandering review of this camera with loads of pictures. So I'll post the link to that below. So yeah, check it out, and I'll catch up with you again soon.